Okay, welcome. I'm going to be doing a train series, and this is the first episode, Rubble Pile. This could be a rubble pile for apocalypse or a city fight. The idea is it's a ruined building that's fallen, perhaps. Here's a close-up. Now here are the tools that you're going to need. Some sort of saw. This is a coping saw. You can also use a bandsaw or a jigsaw if you have access to one. It's to cut out the shapes in the hardboard. An X-Acto knife, scissors, masking tape, sand or other sand type material, pebbles that you can get from a garden store or pet store, old paper towel, tubing, and pieces of foam core and cardboard that you use to as pieces of rubble. Here's a piece of pink insulation from Large Construction. This was for another train project and just leftover piece. You can break it up into small pieces that can be rubble. It's lightweight. Pieces of cardboard that you can cut into shapes that are broken pieces of concrete or fallen metal or whatever. Also hardboard for your bases. These two pieces are already cut out. You can also use cardboard for your base. You just have to get a sturdy piece, and then I suggest using masking tape on it to protect it from the paint and the glue, which will tend to warp cardboard. But if you're careful, you can get cardboard to work very easily, and it's very inexpensive. Now you cut out your shape. I used a coping saw. You can use a bandsaw. Then I file the edge. The edge, it's about an eighth of an inch, I believe. And it's, it just looks a little nicer if you can give it a nice 30-degree, 45-degree angle. Creates a nice slope for it. Here's a close-up. You can see the difference between the one that hasn't been filed and then the one that has been filed. The one has a hard edge and the one has a nice, beveled, kind of rounded edge. Now you take one thing was glue is the one ingredient I forgot to mention at the beginning. I watered down some glue and used an old paintbrush also. Then you just start gluing on your pieces of rubble all around the piece of your base, your hardboard base. You can use pink insulation foam, the paper towel rolls, it can be old pipes. Here I'm cutting up pieces of that foam with the X-Acto knife, gluing them on, and this I'm going to use some masking tape to give it some bulk, to make little hills. The one thing is it's lighter than mounding up sand. And if you mound up sand and rocks and stuff, it can get really heavy really quick, and this just saves you some sand, and also it's just a nice, easy, lightweight way to give you some bulk, some depth. And you continue to add pieces on there, be creative, put them, wherever you want. You can pile it up as densely as you want to, just something that looks like it's a collapsed building, or you can almost see a little bit of a crater shape in the middle. We'll get more into craters in episode 2 of the video. Now I put the piece in a box top to catch the sand that will be pouring over the top of it. It's just an old GW box top, and we're going to use the pebbles and sand to sprinkle over top of it, and the box top will catch all that to not make a mess. I also use pieces of cut up sprue. You're sitting watching TV, you can sit there and cut up little pieces of sprue to make little bricks that can be part of your rubble. And there's a piece of some sort of scrap metal in there from something I found or whatever. Anything that will look like a piece of scrap or a girder from a building. Now I take the glue and water it down like I mentioned. And this glue I'm going to use to paint around the base. And cover all the hills of the the tape hills there with it. And you're going to avoid going on top of all the pieces of rubble. You want to keep them, you don't want sand all over everything, so you want to keep those pieces of rubble sticking out a little bit so that there's a different texture there. A difference in texture between the sand that you're pouring over right here and the other pieces that will look more like rocks once they're painted up. Now you dump the sand once it's dried. And you'll notice once you do this that there are bare spots. Spots of tape sticking out on the tops of the hills and just some places that need to be touched up. So at this stage you're just going to go over it again and make sure you get all those spots covered up with some glue. Going over those, and you'll notice how I build up around the little pieces of cardboard. Like that piece of cardboard down on the left could use a little build up around the bottom just to make it feel like it's buried more. You can see on the one on the right there, I just put a big glob of glue on it. Now here I'm going to use this sprues in the heavy spots where I have heavy amounts of glue, just to give it again another texture. These look different than the rocks, so they look more like they're, you know, bricks or pieces of metal that have broken apart in the collapse. And then I pour sand all over it again, so that those pieces of sprue kind of get buried just a little bit, and then the rest of the stuff gets buried also. Continue to pour the sand on, and again you let it dry. Dump the sand off. And you can do this as many times as you need to get a nice, you know, get the pieces of rubble buried enough so that they look somewhat like natural. Once that's done, we lay it out on some newspaper because we're going to paint it. You need a rag or towel for any cleanup or spills. Again, an older paintbrush is good, and then just some flat black paint. Just get a quart from the hardware store, and you just go about painting all the entire piece of terrain. And this black is a nice color to use for base because it makes it easy to paint over and dry brush and do the things you're going to have to do to make this, to give this kind of a realistic look in the end. It gives you nice shadows in the recesses. Once it's dried, then you go back with different colors, and you can use any colors you want. I use kind of a dark brown, a kind of a ochreish yellowish color, a cream color, a cream tan color, and then also some white and black to make gray, different shades of gray. I start out with the brown, so it's as if some dirt's been, you know, kicked up in all of this. And I don't dry brush necessarily. It's kind of a wet brush, but you don't want to glob it on there. You want to make sure that it's kind of a dry brushing, but a wet, kind of a wet dry brush, not globbed on there. You notice I kind of dab some of it off on the plastic tray there, so that it doesn't go on too thick, because I want to see some variation in color, and I want the recesses not to be full of all this brown, because when the recesses are left dark black, it will make it look shaded or shadowed. Now I start adding the kind of ochre color. Just this, I really make sure I don't put on too heavy. And you just go around in all the places that are going to be dirt. You notice I'm not going everywhere. I'm leaving some things black. Those are things that are going to be different colors. Now I go over with the. You notice I dab on the newspaper this time with the cream color, and I dry brush over it again. And now I use this is gray, which is a mixture of white and black. Now if you have gray, you can just use gray. But I like to have different shades of gray, so this starts out as a kind of a darker charcoaly gray. I go over anything that's going to be stone or rock. I go over with with the gray. Now, some of the pieces, like the pieces of cardboard and that sort of thing, if you want to have it be a color, a slight color, you can paint it. Once you let the gray dry, you can kind of go over it with a, you know, a darker, really dark green or red to make it look like, you know, maybe a red brick. You can do blue, and just to give it a little bit of color, but still keep it that city look. Now I've added a little bit more white to my gray, and I'm going over all the rocks and stones again, just to kind of, and this time I'm doing much more dry brushing, because you just want to catch the highlights, and I keep going a little lighter, adding more and more white, and I don't worry about getting gray on some of the brown areas, because I figure it's concrete dust, and it makes it look real, you know, like something's falling apart, and it's not all just one color. And here I'm continuing to add white to the gray spots. Really just giving more and more highlights to the stone pieces. Really making sure I get in there. See, they start to pop out a little more from the brown base. And I just, you know, I try to touch all the little pieces of sprue and everything with that. You can use a smaller brush if you want. I'm just quickly going over, catching all the little, you know, anything that's a pebble or anything, I try to catch it with this. And here's a close-up of kind of what it begins to look like. Now I'll take these paper towel rolls and I'll color them. I'm using tin bits here, which is a GW color, and it's a nice kind of a coppery brassy color. And I use that to do these pipes so that they have a little metallic in them. So once I've finished with the tin bits, I go over with a little bit of bolt gun or chainmail. Just dry brush, just slightly over it, just to give it a little bit of variation. Like it's tumbled down from a high building and it's been sitting there getting all rusted and corroded. And then there's the piece of terrain all finished. You can see some variation there, tin bits and bolt gun metal. So that's my first terrain video. Please leave suggestions on what you'd like to see as far as future terrain videos, and any feedback on this video. This is my first terrain video. If there's something that you'd like to see that I didn't do, or if I'm going too fast or anything too slow, just let me know. Leave some comments and I'll do what I can to improve them. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to watch future episodes of the Terrain Cave and to see our battle reports. Comments are much appreciated, and click to like the video if you want us to continue. Thank you.